Does video make sense for an audio podcast? It's the Podcast Report, episode 38. Show notes, links, conversation, and more at thepodcastreport.com/38.
It's the Podcast Report with Paul Colligan. And here's Paul.
The big idea, reaching your audience is more important than your format. If you're going to reach your audience with video, you should be doing that. And maybe you move it to audio and make a podcast. Maybe you don't. Let's chat about it. My name is Paul Colligan. I am a 7-time best-selling author, got a bunch of books about podcasting, have been in podcasting since day one. I love this industry. I love podcasters. I love the trials and tribulations. But the ones that I love are not the which microphone do I use and which hosting platform do I work with. But my questions go a little bit deeper. What's happening in the industry that really counts and really matters? And that's what the Podcast Report is about. Been in this since the beginning, have been so since day one. Two audiences for the show. Number one, the podcaster. Those of you who are podcasting, enjoy. Thank you. I appreciate what you're doing. Hopefully I'll help you ask the better questions, get the better answers, make a better show. Of course, there are those of you thinking about getting into podcasting as well. Welcome to the Podcast Report. Not a massive play, but a deep one. All right, let's chat about the topic. Why this topic? Why am I talking about video and audio and that kind of stuff in a podcast? Right now, Meerkat, and some of you might be listening to the past archives of the show and curious that this was once a thing and kind of laugh about it. But at the time of the recording, Meerkat was a huge issue. People were talking about it. The buzz is everywhere. And if you don't know Meerkat, I've got a link to it in the show links. It's a iPhone app only right now. By the way, show links are at thepodcastreport.com/38. What Meerkat has done is it has made live video streaming incredibly easy. It's been easy before, but it's almost painfully easy. And because it's so easy, a lot more people are doing live video. And I've chatted before on this podcast about the idea of maybe one day taking the Podcast Report to recording it at the same time every week, doing it live, doing a video version of this. So I've been thinking about this. There are others who are doing it. I'll put a link in the show notes to Podcasters Roundtable, a great show. They get together on Google Hangouts. They do video, and they do stuff that can only be done by video. It's fun to be in a conversation where you chat with other podcasters and find out what's going on. And Ray does a great job with that show. So there are people who are creating their audio podcast content from video initially. One client of mine is moving his video show to an audio podcast, and we're doing that for him now. So there's some transitions there. Ed Dale, with his Walking with Larry podcast, Ed's always been a hero of mine. Ed's doing some great things. I caught him a couple of days ago on Meerkat walking with his dog, Larry, and thinking about the idea of maybe taking that video from Walking with Larry and making it a actual audio podcast as well. And the thing that's interesting about this topic, the thing that's interesting about taking your audio podcast from your video is that it's really everything that I've been teaching and everything I'll probably continue to teach in the podcasting space. Reaching your audience is more important than your format. You know, this idea that, is video okay for audio? Well, it doesn't matter. What matters is reaching your audience in the way that makes the most sense for them. And if it's possible to reach more people with less effort, for goodness sakes, as communicators, why wouldn't we want to do that? So I'm going to give some best practices. I'm going to give some ideas to this, but on the concept, on the idea of communicating to a lot of people, this gets really, really interesting. All right, so why does this matter? Well, first of all, audio is easier to consume. The amount of times that I have the ability to be listening to audio, be it driving in the car, be it going on a walk, being it working on the computer, something happening in the background, it is easier to consume audio than it is video. That's one of the reasons why audio podcasts do so well. The best chances, all things being equal, for a podcast download is an audio podcast. Yes, video podcasts are a thing. Yes, PDF casts are a thing. Yes, there are casts that are not necessarily audio. But audio podcasting wins because it is so easy to do. It is so easy to be part of this whole thing. So you want to think that through. So what do we do with this? Live video is getting easier to produce than it ever has been before with things like Meerkat. And again, Meerkat's not the only one. Because it's easier to produce than ever before, And then you add to it a high value perception of video versus audio. I mean, if you want to learn about a certain topic and there's a video and there's an audio, video is going to have a higher perception to it. So if it's getting easier to create and there's a higher perception to it and you can reach more people with it, things start to get really, really interesting. You got Meerkat, you got YouTube video, you got Ustream. If this means an extended audience, then things are really, really excited. And of course, if I can take this video, and I'm not talking the jump from an audio podcast to live video streaming. I'm talking live video streaming of which the content becomes the audio content for your audio podcast. So it's not a jump from A to B. It's a combination of A and B using the best for both. Hope that makes sense. And then the other thing that's really interesting, and this is one of the reasons why with this show, I'd like to go what we call live to tape. Going live creates a certain energy. And we just chatted last week to the different types of podcasts, but when you go live, when you hit the record button and you're not going to hit stop until it's done, that creates a certain energy. When you go live, that creates even more of a certain energy. I remember the first time I went live with Meerkat, I was in my car and I just heard about it and all the safety issues. Don't worry, I was a good boy. But I hit stream, and as I'm driving down the street, I'm seeing people pop up, and with no marketing, no nothing. I think there were about like 13, 14 people in the chat room, all interacting with me, and that live buzz, that knowing that people are watching you, knowing that people are looking at you, gives you a certain energy, gives you audience interaction. You can move the content to what it is they want to think about. You might say something, and I created my outline for this. And the outline's not perfect by any means. And if I were to do this live, video or audio, of course, someone could interact and go, hey, what about this? And I might not have thought about that. And I can go deeper with that and be better to you. Now, live interaction obviously isn't only a video thing. You can go live interaction with audio. I've done some play with Spreaker, and there's some other tools out there, but we have options. We definitely have options. But so we have this thing, and what do we do with it? Now, is Meerkat it? Is Meerkat the golden child of all this? No. Is it a flash in the pan? I don't know. There's politics. There's all sorts of issues with Meerkat. But I'll tell you, I saw one thing. I've been debating Meerkat. I've been thinking about Meerkat. I've been wondering what it means. I've been thinking about doing an episode here, the podcast report about it. But then I saw something a couple of days ago that really changed my opinion of it. And it was Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon has started to record the practice for his monologue on Meerkat. Now, I don't know who holds it. Obviously, he doesn't do it. But somebody's streaming him practicing his daily monologue. And it's a secondary screen thing. It's a before the event. It's a behind the scenes type of thing. But I think what's interesting is it's not Meerkat as a primary form of distribution, but it's like a secondary one for the fans. And the majority of you are going to listen to the podcast report on audio because, every Tuesday when it comes out, and if you're listening to this at a later date and we're no longer coming out on Tuesdays, deal with it. But, every Tuesday when it comes out, you're in your car, the podcatcher, says you've got a new episode, you listen to it. That's great. That will always be more than are on video, but it's interesting there. And man, if you knew, you know how it is. You see somebody on radio and you wonder what they look like. And if you could see them performing it live, that would be interesting. So the Jimmy Fallon example, I think there will be others. It's definitely worth exploring. Meerkat's not going to be the winner, but on-demand video streaming will. Already today, Ustream, who was, I think, if not the original, one of the original live video streaming platforms, they basically announced kind of their own platform that's going to let other people basically be their own Meerkat. So this world of live video streaming is coming fast. And two things, not here on my outline, but they just came to me. Number one, my iPhone 6 Plus has a great camera. I'm streaming from my iPhone 6 Plus, looks fabulous, and data makes it possible. And I'm a T-Mobile user, and I've got the unlimited data plan with T-Mobile. And with T-Mobile, it's actually real. And pretty much where I go, I've got full access to T-Mobile. So I've got a great camera. I've got unlimited streaming. I've got all this capacity. So it makes a bunch of sense. And whether it's the second screen, maybe it's me practicing for things like Jimmy does, or maybe it's me going live, and maybe it's keeping the video, not keeping the video. Maybe, you just get the camera as I record this, and then the microphone that I use for the podcast is something else. I don't know, but it's all worth exploring. All right. Thought I'd take a thought on a couple of best practices if you're going to do this. If you're going to take your video and go to audio, best practice number one, don't forget where your numbers come from. There's probably someone who's going to start with video or move to video and find out the video does better for them than audio does. But for most of us, our numbers are going to come from the audio podcast. And if we get so excited about the video and we start worrying about the makeup and the lighting and the acoustics and the studio and the green screen and all these things, and we're taking 90% of our effort for 10% of our audience, that's a bad idea. So you don't forget where your numbers come from. And it's the live video recording of an audio show is what you want to produce. If you do a big animated intro, some people who do video, they get a really fancy intro done and it's a minute long and maybe it's just audio with great visuals, but it's just music or that type of thing. If you were to take a 2-minute audio from a video intro that looked great but was just music, you'd upset your audience. You'd frustrate your audience. So if you're going to do this, definitely think about the intro. I would make that short as is possible, or at least speak over it or that type of thing. If you do something visual on the show, like I'm holding up my hand right now and you can't tell how many fingers I have holding up. What you do is I'm going to say I'm holding up 4 fingers right now. If you do anything visual, just speak to it in audio form. And you do that and you don't have to worry about any visuals lost. And one thing you can do if there's a piece of visual that does get lost, you can give people an opt-in process to get it. And I'm going to do so right now. If you text the show hotline, 503-897-1290, and you text hashtag EP38, hashtag, that's the # EP38, I will text you, or I will send you the transcript from today's episode and the mind map that I worked from here. That's a way to get you the visuals. So you're listening to the audio. It's a way to get the visuals. It's a way for me to build an opt-in list. There's some really interesting options there. So if anything's visual, speak to it and give them the opportunity to grab it. And then the flip side of this, though, is give them something to look at if your show is mostly audio. If you are doing an audio podcast video and it's just video of you and your mug talking into a microphone, that's really boring. And that's not that exciting. So you want to give them something to look at. And that could be anything from you begin to be more animated, which makes for better audio, which gets funny. Maybe you have, screenshots in the background, something like that. Definitely give them something to look at if they are coming into video. So the big 4 were, don't forget where your numbers are. Number 2, beware the big animated intro. It gets lost in the whole audio thing. Number 3, if there's anything visual, speak to it and make it available. And then number 4, give them something to look at if it is mostly just audio. So what am I doing? I am re-examining everything. I almost did this episode on Meerkat, but to be honest, I couldn't find a stand to put my phone on that would have made this possible. I've chatted about this in past episodes. A live video version of this is imminent, and I'm looking at it. I'm re-examining. I'm pondering recording this show live. The other show that I'm working on, pondering that as well. What you can do is I would definitely recommend going live once and just seeing what it's like. And the funny thing is even if you don't have an audience, the possibility, the potential that someone might jump in live is intoxicating. And what happens is if you go live, the adrenaline kicks in, the excitement kicks in, it becomes a lot more fun. And so try going live once, see if it changes anything. You might find that you've got some new enthusiasm and some new ideas that you don't have before. If you've gone live and you have any thoughts, go ahead and share it. I would love to hear your experience. You can head over to thepodcastreport.com/38. So there's a few thoughts on does audio make sense? Does video make sense for an audio podcast? This is the Podcast Report at thepodcastreport.com. Thepodcastreport.com/Twitter/Facebook. All the social links are there. The blog is up. Comment away. Thepodcastreport.com/38. Show hotline is 503-897-1290. I've got some links over at the website, thepodcastreport.com/38. Got a link to my book, How to Podcast. That's doing well. You guys have kept that in the charts. Thank you so much. I've got a link to Meerkat for you. I've got a link to the Podcasters Roundtable, a podcast that's done video first, comes out on audio. I link actually to the episode that I did with the guys late last year. I put this up in the Google community, I asked if there were any thoughts that people had on going from video to audio. I know there are a lot of people in there who do that, so I'll see what they have to say. I've got a link to that. Spreaker, which is the audio version of going live, I definitely should put that in there. And then I've got a link to Ed Dale's Walking with Larry podcast that I watched recently, and we'll see what happens there. If you have not subscribed to the Podcast Report, please do so. It is the power of podcasting that lets you get a new episode every time that is released that makes podcasting so powerful. So thepodcastreport.com/iTunes if you're an iOS user, /Stitcher if you're an Android type, /Pocket Casts, Android as well, /TuneIn if you're Microsoft, /Spreaker, /iHeartRadio, /Overcast. We're there. We've got on all these places. If you want to email me, it's thepodcastreport@outlook.com. Of course, again, one last time, the website is thepodcastreport.com. My name is Paul Colligan. This is episode 38. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you next week. Bye.